Hello and welcome to a podcast with Feroz, the CIO at Syngenta, and Roland, Head of Corporate IT at Syngenta as well. Thank you so much for taking your time and doing this with us, guys. And if I can, please ask you to come in and do a quick introduction about Syngenta and your roles there as well.
Fantastic. So thank you, Adit, for having us. And hi, everyone. Just to briefly introduce Syngenta, Syngenta Group is $33 billion conglomerate focused on agriculture. World's number one in crop protection products for agriculture, herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, and so on. And number two or number three in seeds, where we are incubating, innovating new seeds, new varieties of corn, soybean, and, various other agricultural crops that you can think of. Really happy to be here and to talk about what we at Syngenta Group are doing with AI technologies and how it is shaping agriculture. And introducing myself, I am the CIO and Chief Digital Officer for Syngenta Group. My own background has been an entrepreneur, philanthropy, and now leading IT and digital for Syngenta Group. And I also play a role outside of Syngenta in as the board chair of Ag Gateway Consortium of more than 200 ag tech companies, defining standards in data interoperability for agriculture. Really glad to be here, Adit.
Thank you so much for giving us time. Roland.
Yes, hi Adit. Hi everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm the head of corporate IT. So my role is really focused on making sure our company runs as efficient and effective as possible, working with all the corporate functions. My background is in computer science. My career was in enterprise IT over the last 25 years. I'm always focused on bringing in new and innovative technology for the benefit of the business, and that's essentially what I'm doing here as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking your time, Roland. Glad to have both of you here with us today. So, just to start off, my first question is: there's a lot of things that are happening in the world of AI today, specifically generative AI, but also AI in general over the last 5 years has completely blown up. What all areas do you see generative AI or AI having an impact in your business for you at Syngenta? And maybe Feroz, you can tell us more on this.
Sure. I think it's one of the areas where we see AI playing a huge role for us is in innovation, in helping our new research in chemistry, in genetics, and out there in bringing new differentiated products and services for our farmers. We have been working in the space of AI for quite a few years now. The generative AI as a phenomenon is more recent from a consumer point of view, but there is a lot of research that we are doing on what we call as generative chemistry, or AI for AI, artificial intelligence for discovering new active ingredients. And this is a space where we feel really excited about, because it can change how the research cycles look like in bringing new products into the market. And then, of course, in the commercial field, so when I move out of the lab into the field, there is a whole lot of decisions that farmers make in the course of a year, of a crop season. And we are seeing several of those decisions which can be more data-driven, backed by AI machine learning algorithms, from something as simple as which seed variety should a farmer plant, right, given the soil and weather condition, all the way to how do they take care of their crop through the season and then the harvest. So really AI is core to, both in the lab as well as in the field for Syngenta.
Amazing, Feroz. This is what you have done in the lab and in the core business of Syngenta. Let's hear more from you, Roland, about the impact you see from AI in corporate IT or across the enterprise?
Absolutely. Operational excellence is one of our strategic pillars in the company, and that's where AI provides huge opportunities. And I'm covered two fields here. One is productivity, and the other one is employee experience. From a productivity perspective, we have been driving efficiencies for quite some time using automation. This year, we have called out the year of automation to further increase and scale that, and we have saved many thousands of hours of work through different technologies. It's not all AI. Sometimes it's simple things that work best, but AI is the enabler here. And that is not only generative AI, which is still new, but we have several projects where we applied machine learning to help automate things like handling tickets coming in from vendors, for example. Employee experience is another field that I'm very passionate about, because I'm convinced that the whole digital experience that consumers have received over the last decade is still missing in the enterprise context, probably in most companies at least that I know of. And this can change, and it needs to change, because it's of fundamental importance, in particular in times of younger generations coming in with different expectations, but auch talent shortages that are driven by demographic trends. This is of increasingly importance for the company to succeed. And that's where we are very focused as well, to experiment in different areas. Where can we bring in AI to make work easier for the employees, for our workforce, get things done in a more automated, more proactive and simple way.
Amazing with what you just said, Roland. I have a question. So we speak to a lot of CXOs globally, large companies, right? And they often ask me, what's the ROI of employee experience? Can you tell us your experience? How do you think about it, Roland?
Absolutely. Great question. And not an easy one. There are two or maybe three parts to that answer. Firstly, there's plenty of research that proves the impact of a positive employee experience on the business outcomes. Happy employees are more motivated, serve the customers better, leads to better business outcome. So there's data that proves that, and there's a value in investing in employee experience from that perspective. Secondly, when you look at it more pragmatically, when you save people time wasted by looking to get something done to fix an IT problem or something that is not value adding, depending on the size of the company and the structure, roughly for us, 1 minute saved per day an employee is a $5 million productivity gain.
Wow.
Right? But these are significant numbers. I think the practical challenge is, how do you translate it to a business case? Because these savings generally don't show up on anybody's cost centers. And that's where it's more of a pragmatic approach. What we are trying to do is make the connection between a better employee experience and some more tangible productivity gains in the same project. So you have those productivity gains or cost savings in a more direct way, but at the same time you drive a much better employee experience by focusing on UX, UI investment, etc.
And automation. Makes sense. Anything that you'd like to add as a CIO, Feroz?
Yes, it's difficult to quantify, and sometimes we just need to take a leap of faith. And this is what we did when we declared this year. At the start of the year, we ran a campaign of Year of Automation. And we said that, let's look for these opportunities where even a few minutes here and there saved in a day will unlock a significant amount of productivity across the organization. Getting a better employee experience will take care of motivation and such productivity. So it was, we took a leap of faith, and we have seen some amazing results through the course of the year. So
amazing. So from both of you, we've heard how you're using AI, generative AI in your core business and across the enterprise, right, in the last few minutes. Now, I'd love to quickly go deeper and understand, how do you decide whether you want to, you'll have a bunch of ideas coming to you on a daily basis, especially now. Everyone's talking ChatGPT, everyone talking generative AI, right? So you have a bunch of ideas coming to you. How do you evaluate them, whether you want to work on them or not? That's number one. And the second question which you can answer after this is going to be around how do you decide whether you want to build or do you want to partner, right?
Yeah. Let's tackle the what challenge first, and then we'll talk about, the how challenge after. So
Absolutely.
One of the things which we did was we decided that, our core strategy is focused around these three pillars: innovation, customer experience, a better customer experience, and productivity. So it really kind of was a straightforward input to the organization that let's bring forward ideas which are falling into these categories, whether it is generative chemistry to promote innovation, whether it is, recommendations, agronomists and farmers to promote customer experience, or, any effort where technology-driven automation can save our team some effort and productivity, and the year of automation campaign that I spoke. But really, what we did was we decided that the role that IT and digital team has to play is to solve some of these core problems like the generative chemistry, but then provide an enabler environment to the rest of the organization. And then we said that let's crowdsource the innovation of ideas as well as using technology to implement those ideas to the entire 50,000 people organization. And that's been our strategy, that you let people come up with ideas, and they will obviously also bring forward the impact that they can see, and then you can let that decide which ones to focus on.
So it's like a Shark Tank for Syngenta.
Pretty much an internal Shark Tank.
Amazing. So then my next question to you, Roland, is just taking from what Feroz said. Let's say, you get 5 ideas from your team, right? From this Syngenta, Shark Tank. How would you decide, what to work on? Now, people are going to estimate impact of their work, I'm pretty sure, right? So they're going to tell you the problem, they're going to tell you the impact. But then how do you finally decide, like whether the technology is feasible, whether you are ready for it or not? Like, there are multiple other considerations that you must also take in place. So what are some of these that our listeners could benefit from when they are evaluating particular ideas?
Sure. I mean, there's this classic 2 dimensions where you have the feasibility and the value potential, right? So in particular in newer fields, probably best to really go for where there's reasonable value potential in combination with a high likelihood to succeed, because we know the technology or it's easy to leverage, right? So that's the starting point. And then really what I'm trying to do is go for experiments in a broader space, like rather a few more experiments to start with, to explore, and then fail fast, kind of take an agile approach, try things out, stop those that don't work or turn out not to be promising, and then focus and accelerate on the more promising ones, and to that filter the ones that ultimately drive something.
Got it. So to summarize, let's say you got 10 ideas, you'll see, okay, feasibility and value. Like, these are the 5 that actually show that they're feasible and they have high value impact. So you're going to take those 5, run 5 pilots, and then, if they show the value in the pilots, then you take them forward. Instead of actually going in all in today, you'll say, okay, let's do a 3, 6, whatever month pilot, and then decide what to do next, right?
Yes, and there are different flavors of that depending on the situation and context, of course. But for newer innovative technology, that's generally the approach that I've been most successful with.
Amazing. So, I can also corroborate to that. I think, some of the best, especially because we work in Gen AI ourselves, right? Some of the best partners to work with have been the ones that want to experiment initially. Because see, what happens is a lot of people don't know what to expect. So it's better to do a quick experiment, do a quick pilot, and that allows everyone in the room to understand the technology and what it can and cannot do. So that's great information, Roland. So back to you, Feroz, on this. So let's say, you've decided that you want to do something, right? How do you decide whether you want to build or you want to partner with someone? Like,
it is, I think it's important to realize that we are talking about an intersection of the core domain and computer science. right? So the whole space of AI, deep learning, neural net, and even large language models and such is core computer science expertise. Now, for us, the the domain of chemistry, the domain of genetics, the domain of agronomy, this is the knowledge that we have. And there is a lot of expertise that we have across our R&D teams internally, where we have, invested in building the capacity to push forward this internal domain expertise using computer science and AI. So we have, that becomes a key differentiator where we choose to build it out, where it becomes business critical. It relates to the core domain of chemistry, genetics, and agronomy. In fact, we built a new team, which is literally an intersection of computation and agronomy. The team is called Computation, which is bringing some of these new technologies in the hands of our agronomists and farmers by applying that knowledge together. But then there is also the space of, the whole enterprise itself and products where the core domain is probably not as critical. And there it's a lot easier for us to work with partners and, roll out new technologies. Because it's important to realize that we cannot solve all problems internally. And therefore we are very, very open to working with players outside in solving these problems and bringing the new AI technologies to our enterprise.
Amazing, Feroz. So, from an enterprise architecture and enterprise applications perspective, Roland, what is your approach when it comes to, thinking of doing something in AI, like build or partner? What and how do you decide that?
I think in general, in my space, in the corporate space, what we do is not really a major differentiating factor for Syngenta Group as a whole. The problems we are solving are the same as in most other companies, and actually it's very similar across industries. You just need to run the company as efficiently as possible in a compliant way, etc. So from that perspective, I generally have a buy strategy. Like, we partner a lot with external companies to get things done, to bring the capabilities in. We may have some configuration capability in-house, but again, then based on platforms that we bring in from the outside. And I don't see any difference on the AI side. We may bring in some core infrastructure, also for security reasons. We have our internal deployment of OpenAI, for example. We leverage external partners and suppliers to bring those capabilities into the corporate space.
Amazing, Roland.
And if I just build on what you said, Roland, I guess from an enterprise point of view, the differentiation comes from how well we are able to wire these different systems and data, the dimension of time, for example, right? So how long can we invest into building something ourselves versus maybe we can get to a point very quickly if we are partnering with someone who's already built that technology. So there is that dimension of time, there is that dimension of, how do we wire all of our systems together to drive better AI, better insight. And that becomes a differentiator within the end.
Makes a lot of sense. So, coming back to Feroz and what you just said about, you have actually gotten people, actually set up a team that does the AI and the computational agronomics. So this is a team that is set up by you, right? So my question then becomes was investing in this team, driven from you, or, was the business was completely, let's go, let's do this? What was that? And if there was a challenge, how did you overcome that?
It is, I can say that it was a combination of the business opportunity that we saw and the decision to invest in it from a point of view of driving technology-led innovation. It was an interesting journey, like a roller coaster, that initially there was a bit of resistance that, can an algorithm give me a better recommendation than an agronomist who's got decades of experience. And you really have to work with, the enterprise and the rest of our agronomy team leaders to showcase, convince them through data and through the science behind those computational models that, these results are good. And then we saw that the adoption and resistance melting away and the adoption just continuing to grow. So yeah, it was opportunity driven, but it was also this a deep conviction that technology can make a difference. And with that, we invested in creating, and it's paid us rich dividends.
That's amazing. I'd like to dive deeper with you, Feroz, here. Let's kind of talk about this use case, right? I know I've had prior conversations with you, so I know about it, but I'd love for the audience to know, this looks like a huge change. So if you can spend like 2 minutes on explaining, what you built, and then, was it easy for you to get people to use it? You talked about adoption. That's a big topic that our listeners would want to understand, right? And generally with AI tools, while there are the good parts, there are also the bad parts where people are afraid and they think that it's going to impact jobs, etc. Right? So, what was your strategy in getting this implemented in your organization, and then actually how did you drive their adoption up? So, if you can spend like 2 minutes on that, that'll be great and useful for the audience here.
Sure. So let me elaborate this with an example. Out there in the field, different genetics perform differently based on the soil conditions and so on. So one of the things which our computational agronomy did was they built a model where an AI algorithm factors in all of this data, the data about the soil, data about the weather forecast, and combines it with data from all of our R&D data about the different genetics. And even, on that particular field goes back in time looking at, the year. So, and this algorithm is then able to make a recommendation on what is the best variety that the farmer should select for their field, and how should they plant. Instead of an average planting weight, the algorithm is able to generate a variable rate planting weight based on soil, slope, and everything that you can.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there was obviously initial hesitation in adopting it, because when you take a recommendation like this to our agronomists, the agronomists who have been in the field, they understand that particular farmer's field for many, many years and have decades of experience, right? How do you convince them that a computational algorithm can give an equally good recommendation or a better recommendation? But then we saw, through experience, through rolling it out in pilot, that these agronomists saw the value that what the algorithm is doing is actually giving them a better suggestion, which is more data driven. And then their beliefs and faith in the algorithm started to become more stronger. And that was the pivotal point for us, that once the agronomy team was on board, that became really the tool through which they sell seeds. And today, that is the de facto way of selling seeds. So yeah, it's a journey, right? You have to build it, you have to try it out, you have to work with the people who really know a thing or two about it. And then, once they're convinced, once the organization at large is convinced, then the scale up happens.
Wow, that's a amazing story, Feroz. Like, there are very little, stories that I get to hear when talking to CIOs, CXOs, where they've actually been taking and, proper AI system built in-house and, create that kind of impact in the business on the ground. So that's amazing. Kudos to you guys. Switching over to you, Roland, really quickly. What are you currently thinking about from a skill development and future of workforce at Syngenta? Like, how are you working towards upskilling and making your workforce more AI ready, or maybe just more open to AI altogether? Because, as Feroz's example gave a clear indication that, together with AI, people can do much more, right? So, what are you doing today? What are your plans? And have you already done anything in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big question, right? There's definitely a longer transformational journey here that has started to happen and will be happening over the time. One of the specific things we are doing, and actually just today we launched a training we call AI Accelerator. That's a 10-day focused training program, very hands-on. It starts with a full-day training on tools like our internal ChatGPT and a few other generative AI tools. Then people get some assignments that relate to their daily work and their specific roles. And after the 10 days, there's another larger session where the team comes together again to discuss the results and further opportunities. And that it's a pilot for now, but it's doing two things. One is it's teaching people how they can actually get value. So the hope is that after those 10 days, they'll be better and more efficient at their work by using those tools. The other part is it exposes them to the technology. So that creates sensitivity for the risks. Like if you know that a large language model hallucinates, and you shouldn't just rely on the output, that's helpful. And so people will experience that themselves and have more sensitivity, which addresses the risk coming with these technologies, but also takes away the fear that some people still have touching those technologies. So it's a combination of those different aspects that we are testing here. And if that's successful, planning to scale that across the organization.
I love the way you are thinking about this. So you're saying, it's a great technology. We know it has a couple of, it could hallucinate at a very small percentage of times. So let's train our people from the day go so that they know about these problems and they know how to use it and get the best out of it and even verify if they need to. So instead of it becoming a problem for tomorrow, just train people today, just like probably how all of us learn how to Google, right? It's almost very similar to that as well. Well, I love this way of thinking. And on that note, I'd love to switch quickly to you, Feroz. So we've talked about AI and how you can train your people at Syngenta, your team members and colleagues at Syngenta. What about small farmers or farmers in general, right? What according to you is going to happen in their lives? What skills are going to become critical for the next generation of these farmers? And how do you think they should ready themselves? Or is Syngenta doing anything? Or do you think it's going to be something that the government and people in that entire ecosystem have to invest in over the next 5-10 years?
All of the above. Basically, I think we need to, the government, society, the enterprise, and the individual, we all need to spend a little bit of focused effort in preparing for these two, right? And it is an organic process. It takes time. The important thing to realize is that the underlying science doesn't change. So a farmer still needs to know how to grow crops. An agronomist still needs to have an understanding of soil and the agronomy itself. And the analogy which I use is that, it's like an accountant, right? You could use a calculator to get your results faster and avoid mistakes in the calculation. But you still need to understand the underlying math behind it, right? The credits and debits and so on. So that's the philosophy that, these new technologies would require the farmers, the big farmers, the small farmers, to have a greater level of comfort in accepting a suggestion made by a machine, for example, right? But they still need to have their own understanding of that doesn't sound right, or yeah, I know, I can see that this recommendation makes sense. So they become operators of the AI technology while applying it in their field, right? That is basically how I see it. Of course, the large farms and small farms, they have different resources. They have a different level of education or skill set to be able to adopt it, right?
Right.
In large farms, they have their own teams internally and perhaps the resources to try out new AI driven, technology driven systems. For example, some of the new farm equipment or drones, right, that can fly autonomously.
Right.
Smallholder farmers probably don't have those kind of resources, but then, an ecosystem around them of entrepreneurs who are drone pilots who can come in and operate a drone on behalf of the smallholder farmer is probably how this transformation will happen.
Well,
But the farmer needs to be aware of what are the options out there.
makes sense. And I think it'll be everyone coming together over a period of time that will make this education happen for everybody. Going to the next part of this, data is extremely important. All of us know that without a data, no AI system can, work. It's going to be garbage in, garbage out. And all of us at some point would have faced these issues. Even, a tech company like an AI tech company like Leena AI, we face these challenges with developers just, not storing data properly. Just give them a database, they'll name it whatever they want and they'll put the data there, right? Then you can go, find it for yourself. So two parts to the question. Number one is, being such a large global organization with operations in Europe, in China, everywhere in the world, how do you kind of take that legacy and make it usable today? And then how do you impact a culture that allows, the thinking to every developer, to every partner in your ecosystem to ensure that data sanity is maintained moving forward? So 2 questions. I'd invite both your comments, Feroz and Roland, on this.
Yeah. And this is fundamental to it, right? AI can only be successful if it is being trained with the right data. And the challenge is that, over a period of time, different systems, they hold data in different formats and so on. Let's first recognize what is the core strength. So for an organization like Syngenta, which is driven by R&D and innovation, the core strength really is the decades and decades of the R&D that we have done and the data that it has produced, right? Now, going back 40 years, people were producing that data on pen and paper. And over a period of time, systems have changed. So yeah, we do have that history and a lot of data which sits in many different formats. So there is a challenge of standardizing it, bringing it all together and feeding the AI. And of course, over the last few years, we shifted to a more standardized data strategy using IoT sensors to collect data. So you kind of get the right level of granularity, quality, and the data is comparable and so on. And that has led to a huge acceleration of what we can do with this data. So better quality means better insight for us. We've also launched an internal, what we call as Digital Growth Academy, where, we have our team members going through the importance of some of these principles around how do you deal with data, how do you make it standardized and easy to use and so on. But yeah, it's an ongoing challenge. There is the legacy, and then there is the future where we are able to leverage some of the standardization with technology.
Amazing. Just to double click on this, Feroz. So you had all that data on pen and paper, and then probably in multiple different systems as well. So did you spend effort to kind of convert it into digital base first? Have you already done that process already?
It's an ongoing journey. We are doing it. We've done it for a lot of it. We are doing it when it is relevant. And there is obviously a lot of data which is probably no longer relevant, maybe pertains to certain seed varieties or active ingredients.
Right.
So we are being a little pragmatic about it, but we have done that digitalization of that data, bringing it into a common data lake through which we can start to feed the AI. But then, of course, digitalization of the data is one part of it, but then what's collected in Americas or what's collected in Switzerland, in Europe, in APAC is different. So there are still ongoing efforts of making that data consistent and usable.
And for this, you are now creating a centralized strategy on what all data you're going to connect moving forward, so that you can ensure that everyone's talking the same language with the same data set, right?
Yeah. And we started that journey last few years. So we today have a very, very robust centralized data lake. And we have the data that is coming from these different systems into the data lake. And then we feed our AI algorithms from here. And then, of course, when it comes to the enterprise, maybe Roland can touch upon it. All of our systems like ERP, Salesforce, and so on, which becomes crucial to be able to feed that data for that employee experience. What do you think, Roland, for the enterprise sources?
I mean, I think there are two things, right? First of all, it starts with the realization of what you are stating as the obvious, right? Data is critical, but very often the expectation is that AI comes in as a magic tool to solve everything, which is not the case. But even if you look at where companies like OpenAI put the effort, it's a lot to overcome the effect of the data that was used to train the model, like bias, etc., things that we don't want in the output. The same is true internally, right? So we have to focus on the data quality. As long as a human person is running a process, they're quite likely to recognize an issue based on their context knowledge and common sense. For AI, the output is only as good as the data that's going in. So this is an important realization that still needs to happen across the company. Then to solve the problem is another question. I often get the request, hey, why don't we do a one-time cleanup of all our data? But that's just not feasible, right? It's just too vast, too humongous. No way. It would be never ending and never done. So my approach is to really work backwards from the outcome. For example, in one of the functions, we just implemented a process where we, in a very structured way, identify the desired outcome in terms of some analytics topics. What are the exact data points we need? Where do they come from in SAP or other company systems? And what criteria do they need to fulfill? And once you have that identified, you can also automate it. You can put in simple things like make fields mandatory or run some algorithms to just check the data quality. And then you can ensure a sustainable improvement of the data quality. But it's hard work. It requires focus and ongoing investment. It doesn't happen by itself.
No, absolutely. And Roland, you've been very clear about, having to do this before you start the journey, right? Either, while you're building it inside or you're partnering with somebody, right? So I still see a gap in, people's understanding globally when I talk to leaders about, the requirement of sane data for the AI to actually learn this. So have there been any instances where you actually have burned your fingers that you're so clear and so direct on what is needed?
Well, we certainly had our learnings on some of the journeys. I think like everybody embarking on AI journeys, we had projects where we try to use machine learning based on data to automate some of our service desk processes. And
right.
Once we launched, we learned that some of the master data is just not accurate enough to produce the right results, and we had much lower success rates than we wanted. So to fix that, we had to go back to the master data, clean up the master data, and then it started to work. But to your point, I'm not taking the approach to do this upfront, right? For me, needs to be part of the journey. If you don't start the journey, we don't know what is actually required for the outcome. We may make very false assumptions, clean up some data sets that in the end we actually don't need. So for me, it goes hand in hand. We start on some project, machine learning or now generative AI, and then we work backwards in terms of what is it that we need to improve on the data side.
That's actually really valuable, specific insight, Roland. I really appreciate it. So whenever an enterprise thinks of doing any transformation, instead of saying that, okay, we're going to take everything that's related to this particular field and clean all the data up, you can say, okay, let's start on the journey, get some results and see, okay, you know what, we need some cleaning on this specific data set, so go back and do that. That's actually pretty valuable. Thank you so much for that, Roland. And now moving forward, we're almost coming to the closure of our podcast. So last few comments from you guys, my question is, what are 3 recommendations to CXOs, to leaders, Feroz and Roland, that both of you have? on starting on this AI or generative AI journey. 3 relevant, very basic recommendations that can get them started today. We can all talk about it and everyone's talking about it, right? But what can get them started today?
I think probably a framework around, who's the target audience of your AI investment. So if we make AI investment, what's the impact we can make to our customers? What's the impact we can make for our employees in the enterprise? And what's the impact that we can make to the products and services, the core innovation that powers the organization? So, having clarity on where the focus is, or if it's all 3, how the strategy pushes forward in these respective areas is probably one important area for the CXOs to think about. The second is probably there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of clutter. So, my experience and my recommendation is to don't be swayed by the hype and don't be overwhelmed by the clutter, right? That look at the key areas of outcomes that you would like to drive for your organization and then pick the battles accordingly. The generative AI space, it's evolving and emerging so rapidly that every week you hear about 10 new startups solving some niche problem.
Absolutely.
So it's, you have to probably not fall for the hype and let the real solutions that deliver value come forward. But then the only way in which this will happen is through a lot of experiments like we spoke about earlier, right? So I think this is so new, right, for the enterprise, for our customers, that probably the best way to adopt it is through experimentation, right? Instead of running a multi-year transformation program and things like that. You don't know where this will take your organization, and whether it's even feasible. May look too enticing today, but it may have a cost which is associated, which is prohibitive and so on, right? So probably that would be my third suggestion, that be open to experimentation, try things out, and those pilots that deliver value, you then choose to double down on.
Amazing. Roland.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. To build on that, I think when it comes to specific use cases, make sure you take the time to really define the problem and desired outcome before jumping on implementing some tool or technology that may seem the right things. And also be open to the possibility that AI may not be the right solution. Sometimes it's easy to fall in love with some of that new technology. But to give you an example, we had some service desk automation ambitions, and there was a lot of conversation around AI to solve this problem. Looking into it, we found that one of the biggest drivers of volume was suppliers calling us to understand when they get paid. And the solution was a simple automated regular email with open invoices and payment dates to the supplier. So now AI solves the problem, done. So that is also a bit of a watch out. Don't throw AI at everything. Focus on understanding the problem and then make sure you take the right approach to solve the right problem.
Amazing. Makes sense. I think one of the recommendations that we give to our customers whenever we talk to them is exactly what both of you said. Define the problem and the stakeholder involved. And, I love what you said, Roland. Everything does not need to be solved by AI. We could just simply have workflows solving them as well. On that note, I'd like to ask one last question, and that is for the other part of the audience. So we could have, young entrepreneurs or technocrats looking at this, podcast. So for them, what is your message to startups and innovators looking to make a mark in the intersection of AI and agriculture? Over to you, Feroz, for this last question.
Sure. First of all, don't hesitate to dream. I mean, if you have an idea, engage with it. That is my message to all entrepreneurs, startup companies, and technology. The role of technology in solving real-world problems, solving societal problems, is immense. And through my own experience at Syngenta and before, I have seen that technology can solve real world problems. And I'm not even talking about the enterprise in societal planetary scale. So yeah, I mean, continue to dream, continue to imagine. But then I think it's important to realize that there is so much hype. I spoke about many new startups coming over, all of them building around the same idea of a GPT, large language model, and so on, right? Many of these startups would probably need to think about what really is the moat around your idea. And you should also think about, what is the focus problem that you're. So having that clarity is more important than just joining the bandwagon of, today's hype around generative AI. So that would be my suggestion. If you have an idea, dream on, but then make sure that you're clear on what problem you're solving and what is the moat around your solution that cannot be developed by somebody else, right? And then the space is open. The impact is huge.
Amazing. Anything you want to add, Roland, from an enterprise perspective? I believe you also engage with a lot of startups. Anything you'd like to add for people who are building for large companies in the enterprise application space?
Well, I would encourage everybody to engage with the customers as early as possible to really understand the problems and partner early. We have some really successful collaborations and partnerships in place. And I think that's the common denominator when I look at those companies. They really talk to us, understand our problems, solve our problems.
Amazing. I think thank you so much, both of you, for spending your time, and to the listeners who have listened to the entire podcast. And I really, really thank you for taking out the 1.5 hours and speaking with us. And hope you have a great day ahead. So thank you so much, Roland and Feroz, for being here with us, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adit, for having us. And thank you, everyone, listeners, for listening to these ideas.